my beautiful children, and welcome to another episode of Miss Vega Says What. I'm Miss Vega. I've missed you. I love it when you're here watching my videos. Thank you so much for subscribing, liking, but what's most important to me is that you share with someone who can benefit from this. Today's episode is Breaking the Fourth Wall. Breaking the fourth wall is when the audience sees behind the scenes of a TV show or a character makes contact with the audience. So I thought about how common it is that teachers use Bloom's taxonomy, and at the same time, I realize kids, y'all probably don't even know what it is, much less do you know that teachers use it. So even though the name might sound complicated, Bloom's taxonomy, don't be intimidated. Bloom's is just the dude that theorized this and studied it. And taxonomy simply means to classify things, to put things in groups. And in this case, Bloom's classified the order of thinking skills. So like in other videos I've done where I've used a chart, I'm going to say about this one that you can find it online, and some, depending on the source you get it from, there may be some differences, but that's because he's measuring thinking skills and it's so abstract, but often the words are synonymous. So like I said, it's pretty common that teachers use this order of thinking to deliver or prepare a lesson, or move from something that might seem more basic to more challenging thinking skills as a lesson progresses. And you can think of it as when you're in class and your teacher might start a new unit by introducing the vocabulary and wanting you to memorize it, or it may just feel like she wants you to memorize it. So basically when she starts the unit, it's just knowing the word, remembering or naming. This used to be, in some charts it's called recall. And then also just the definition, and the definition is just simply to understand or to describe that word. So even though these are at the bottom of the order of thinking skills, memorization actually takes a lot of mental effort, or people do it using a lot of mental effort. So it takes up a lot of your bandwidth, which is something that I explain in Brain Space, a video I filmed called Brain Space. But anyway, once that bandwidth starts feeling too big, like it's too intimidating for you, you become kind of nervous of what's to come. And that's when you start feeling stuck in the lesson. So I'm going to show you guys though, that when you're stuck or when you feel intimidated by how hard the lesson seems, you can actually go from the top and work your way down, and it's going to be more digestible. So you might be thinking like, ma'am, I'm struggling with the basics and you want me to go harder. And yeah, but I'm going to show you, okay? So to look at it, I want you guys to think of video games. It may be the same video game or compare two different video games, but let's just pretend that you're playing a video game and it lets you select the level of difficulty. When you guys start at a more difficult level, your body you don't have to think about it, you don't have to do anything. Your body performs an adaptation, it adapts. And also because you chose to do this, right? You chose to do the challenge, your spirit is up for the challenge. But if you were to go down in difficulty, it's going to seem too easy, almost like they're making fun of you easy, like comically easy. However, if you were to have started the traditional way where you started on easy and then went medium and then difficult, you adapt in that way too. So your body would adapt to the easy level, and the more challenging levels would present a problem, or would present more challenges for you because you told yourself they're harder. So there's an intimidation there. And this also can happen if you play different games, like if you play a challenging game and then a challenging video game, and then you go and play maybe like a simple board game. that board game is going to seem like boringly simple. As a baby though, you guys already did math in this way. That's why I have this little baby right here. You guys already did math this way when you were a baby. So this is a little baby right here, and he has his little baby math toy. So let's say that this is you. Your thinking skills have already done this as a baby. So you're capable of it, is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so the baby math toy starts at application, because if you remember these toys, it's just a matching of a shape into a hole that's the corresponding shape. That is actually starting at application. That's the operation. Like in math class, you guys have operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Their operation is just simply to match, but it's still an operation, and they begin at apply. They actually begin at a higher level. And then once they begin applying and, like slamming it all wrong, then they start analyzing, because they compare. Maybe they'll compare the triangle to the square piece, or the triangle to the square hole, but it's still a higher level of thinking because they're comparing. And then they begin to evaluate their choice. Like they're going to say, okay, I'm going to, maybe not in actual words, but in their baby mind, they're going to evaluate the choice of where they put it in. So they're doing math constantly in these little baby games. They're doing math constantly by making mistakes. So oftentimes you probably hear your math teachers oftentimes, don't be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are literally what you have to do in math to get an answer. You have to. And so you'll remember when you were a baby, that's all you were doing. Because every time they put it in the wrong hole, they're making a mistake. And making mistakes, it trains your brain to go in search of the right answer. So now that you're a kid and you're older, you're in math class, it's the same. Your teacher doesn't want you just to know the answer, just like know the answer. They want you to self-correct your mistakes. They want you to be able to be willing to try to correct your mistakes. So that's self-correct. But what's different from when you were a baby and now is the babies just slam it, right? They don't care. And they don't judge themselves. They're not like, oh my gosh, in their heads, in their baby head, oh my gosh, I'm dumb. I'm a person that's bad at math. I'm bad at math, or whatever. They don't judge themselves. And what can happen, what starts happening around age 7 is that we do begin to develop something in our brain that starts a judgmental type of process for some of us. And that process of thinking can feel really loud when your age is about like 10 to 14, the puberty years. That judgmental brain, when you're in class and it's hard, can be really loud. So you start to judge yourself, and feeling intimidated by the material is a form of self-judgment. You're telling yourself, I can't do it, and maybe you can, maybe you can't, but it's mostly coming out of a place of fear that you're saying that. Okay, so like babies, adults also exist using higher order thinking skills. Often it's tied to money. Like in Analyze, adults compare money stuff. And also in Defend, adults will defend money stuff. So adults exist up here as well. And like babies, in jobs where they perform a duty, they may not even know the name of the parts, because this baby is doing all these skills and they don't even know the name. They don't even know triangle. They probably can't even say triangle or describe triangle. So adults are the same in their place of employment. It's not uncommon that they know how to run the things, but they don't know what the things are called. But adults don't judge themselves. And actually, they make memes about this. So like training new people at their job or whatever, there's a meme for that. That's because to do a job, people, or what people say is experience can be more valuable than knowledge. This is experience and this is knowledge. Adults, like children though, can also feel intimidated. Don't get me wrong. Adults can also feel intimidated when they begin kind of at an easier level. And you can see this maybe if you know an adult who went back to college at an older age, or if you're training for something new at your existing job and you're having to learn a lot of new vocabulary, that can also feel intimidating. But then you realize it's just the things that you're already employing and operating. And oftentimes, because it is tied to money, you'll just push through the fear. Grown-ups, you know. And adults also see the adaptation, your bodily adaptation and reduction when it comes to speed limits. Like if they've been on the highway and then they get off the highway and they find themselves in a school zone, they feel the adaptation in their body to a slower pace, like you guys do, going from difficult video games to easier games. Anyway, so babies don't have that judgment, that self-judgment, and adults just cope with it. But when you're a kid in school, it can make you feel stuck. That's just how it makes you guys feel. I think that's like the most common word for it. I'm stuck. But really, you're stuck is actually the fear of taking an intellectual risk. Like babies slamming it wrong, they're taking an intellectual risk. They just don't care. And they can't even think of intellect in that way, you know? But you guys, children ages maybe 7 and beyond, if you're doing it, or rather I'll say it like this, if you're learning long division, for example, you're performing the same thing as you're supposed to be performing in the same way as you were when you were a baby, just like make mistakes. So I put this long division example up because I know that this is usually where kids get tripped up, and it's the same thing as the baby just being wrong continuously until they're correct. You just have to be wrong. If you're wrong, then you just have to be wrong until you're right. But it's the same thing. There's no judgment in there. Anywho, so what can help you get unstuck in situations like this, if you know my video is not in your pocket right now and you're just at school, is the question that teachers hate. And that question is, when am I ever going to use this? Teachers seem to not love that. I'm a teacher. I can see why they don't love it. But it's actually a valid question. And whether it's you saying it or you just thinking it, and maybe like a class clown is the one that asks it, most kids do wonder, and adults. And when you wonder that, where am I ever going to use this? Your body is genuinely wanting that answer. If that was born of your body, that question, it means that your body needs that answer to continue to process the information that it's getting. And it'll help you get unstuck. But, you know, when are we ever going to use this? Don't ask your teacher. Leave her alone. She's busy. You need to ask yourself. But what I mean by that is that this is the hack, right? The hack is that you need to combo the subject that you're feeling stuck in with something that you're into, just to be into it. So like, let's say you're into art, or you're into music, or you're an athlete, or you're into video games, then you look up how is math used in Pokemon cards or whatever, you know? And that is actually evaluate. And here I wrote the word defend next to evaluate. And so you guys might think like I have to defend whether it's good or bad. And it doesn't mean that when you ask your teacher. So when you ask your teacher, what are we going to use this for? You're asking them to defend it for you. And you need to be defending it for yourself. And what I mean by defense not meaning good or bad, what it means in this is I need to defend its connection to my life. I need to defend its interest to my person. So you're defending its place in your life, or you're justifying its connection and its relevance to you. Because, you know, if you ask your teacher, she might answer something boring, because I would. And answering the question of how it's used is when you ask that and you figure it out, you're actually here in application. When you figure out how is math used in Pokemon cards or whatever, you're observing how it's employed, how it's used. So you're still up here in the higher order. The trick of looking at the bigger picture or analyzing works in math, but it also works in math when you try to ask your parents for help. When you're at home and you ask your parents for help with long division or multiplication, and your parents are like, oh, I learned it differently. Okay, this is gonna come in handy with that. Y'all take that, and I do too. I'm guilty of it too as a teacher. Often whenever an older generation learns how to do an operation in one way and then the newer generation learns another way, then there's like that battle at home of, I don't know how to do it or whatever. I don't know where it became a thing that you can only do it one way. And I'm guilty of it too. So we take it as indicative that we shouldn't learn it our parents' way, but really let your parents show you their way. It'll help you in two ways. You'll be able to compare numbers, which again is a higher order thinking skill. You're going to be able to compare numbers between the method that your teacher has shown you and the method that your parents show you, because they're not going to get y'all aren't going to get different numbers really. It's just going to be a different setup of probably the same similar numbers. And it'll also give you confidence when you're in school and you're really not understanding. You can have your parents' way in your pocket. You don't have to be like, Miss Teacher, I'm going to do it my mom's way. You don't even have to tell her. You can use this to help you understand the way she explains it to you, and it'll give you confidence. If you really don't understand her way, you know you have your own way in your pocket, and that's going to be a source of comfort for you. Anyway, it can yes. So these tricks can also help you if you have to memorize a lot of stuff for like science class, and let's say your teacher gives you a lot of vocabulary to memorize and it's really intense, long words. The way that this works using higher order thinking skills is that you're going to take one of those words. You could take two, this isn't hard. One word, and you are going to look it up like in detail. So you're going to take one of those and you're going to research a little bit about it on YouTube, or maybe BrainPop has a whole lesson on just one of the words on that list. And afterward, after you see that the definition in action, because when your teacher asks you to memorize, it's just right here. But when you see it on YouTube or on BrainPop explained more thoroughly, it's up here. So after that, you're just going to be like, oh, that complicated process I just learned about, it's called this. And it's a lot easier. It'll help you get unstuck when you have to memorize a lot of definitions. Just look at the actual definition in depth and then slap a label on it. It's a lot easier. And remember, babies were doing this because they didn't even slap a label on it. They never said triangle. So if you feel like this isn't gonna work or it's too simple, I will show you the difference between remembering and understanding vocabulary and applying it. So right here it says to synthesize. I can give you guys a definition. The definition is to put or combine separate data points into a coherent whole or single piece of work, right? So I could give you the word and definition and ask you to remember it. Maybe you would remember it, the word synthesize. Maybe you would understand it a little bit. Or I could just simply go like this. All that we just did, where I went through all the parts of this whole, that's to synthesize. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So anyway, I want to go back to video games because they're really going to help you when you're stuck in school. And I'm saying video games, but really it could be any game. And that's because the voice, it may be a voice for a lot of you, or like a sensation or a thought, whatever you call it, that you use when you're playing a game. that's the voice that you're supposed to be using in class. So for example, when you're playing a game and you've been stuck on a level or a certain part in your head, maybe you say it in words, or maybe it's like really fast, but you're gonna say something like, okay, I did this and this last time and it didn't work, so I'm gonna try this. But it's fast, right? Because your video game is fast. That same type of you versus you kind of fast thought is the thinking skill that you should be employing in class. That's the same voice that does all of these. It goes really fast when you're playing a game, and it feels a lot slower when you're learning skills in school. And also, you know, in school, often teachers use like white paper and pencil. So that's going to make it feel really slow for you when you're used to like TikTok and fast graphics. Then your voice is probably your strategic voice, because you're strategizing on video games. Your strategic voice is probably fast, that's just flashing. You need to slow it down and use it at school. That strategic voice is what's going to help you strategize in long division, because it is just a strategy. Okay, so I'm going to go here to the top where it says create, and I really like that they changed it. I don't remember what it was before, but create is new. And I like it because it makes it seem like you got to create like this like massive product. And you know the phrase like, what is it? Process over product or something like that. This is what I'm speaking to. But I like create because of the baby. Like when we think of create, did the baby create anything? Yeah, the baby created fun. Or if you asked his parents would probably say he created life itself. So creation is so big, like in thought, like in theory, but it doesn't have to be anything at all. Nothing. He's giving you no product, right? But he still created. I actually love that it's changed to create too, because Legos are like this. This is literally about Legos, I think. When you create your creation by doing so like in Lego Play, you just start creating, right? You start creating your creation, and then maybe you'll defend or evaluate which brick doesn't go or whatever, or maybe however you want to stack them and stuff. Or like that you might compare the size of one brick to another brick, or you could even be comparing something as simple as the colors. So with Legos, you guys are always using these higher order thinking skills, but actually Legos have names. Each brick has a name. So, and that would be right here. Nobody knows the names of the bricks. And they are also classified by like hinges or flats and stuff like that. So they're also described by their use. Y'all probably don't even know that either if you love Legos. So think of Legos where you don't even use these really, because you don't know the names of each kind of brick, but y'all are making your creations, you're creating. So with Legos and with art, when you create, it is an expansive mind process. Whereas when you get stuck right here, your thought process, your thinking has contracted. And that really leads me to speak to the spiritual part of this, because this is all in the spirit of confidence. It really has a lot to do with confidence. That's why when you think of nerds, you can kind of tell that they have a little bit of confidence, right? Like maybe they don't look a certain way, or maybe they do look a certain way, but they still project like an air of like confidence. It's not just because they're smart and they know the information, but because they're constantly willing to take intellectual risks. So because they take a risk and it pays off, that builds confidence. And they're led by their own curiosity without being stopped by fear. Because that feeling of being intimidated of long division or whatever it is you're learning, that is fear-based thinking. And it's also contracted thought, which is the opposite of an expansive thought. And expansive thinking, you can think of artists who are creative and just expansive. So expansive thought is more like you're looking at the large scope, the universe. And then a contracted thought is where you're just like looking at a really small portion of the math problem, like maybe just this little portion, and your whole mind atrophies into that little problem. You want to have an expansive thought process. All right, guys. Well, that's all I wanted to say about Bloom's taxonomy and being explorational. I don't even know if that's the correct word, but being led by your own curiosity. Even if you don't wonder, where am I going to use this? Maybe look it up anyway, just very broadly, and it'll surprise you how much, particularly math, is used out in the world in creative and fun ways, and ways that apply to you very much, but you probably just don't even know. And then also with words, I love words, and I think you guys should not be intimidated by words when they're presented to you to memorize and repeat, you know, like a little parrot. That takes up a lot of mental effort. But instead, just go and explore what those words mean, and the exploration will be so interesting that you'll remember it, and then you just slap the label on it. That's called whatever. Actually, I can do that for this video. We've been talking about our own thinking, so we've been thinking about our thinking, and that is called metacognition. You guys should definitely Google the word meta, M-E-T-A, because it's like so cool. And I'd be a hypocrite if I was like, here's a definition. But if you look it up and you explore meta, it's just an interesting concept, and it will definitely apply to you in some way. Anywho's, speaking of a memorization being not that necessary, you probably noticed that I struggle with these openers because I can't memorize them. But hey, here I am, I'm still doing intellectual things, right? Okay, so thank you so much for watching my video, for subscribing, and to me the most important thing is that you share, maybe with a teacher or a kid or whoever. And thank you so much. I freaking love you guys. I'll see you soon.